Hello everyone. Today we're going to be painting this fun painting of two trees kind of crossing over. This is a diptych, so it's two canvases creating one picture. This painting can either be done with a partner and you each paint one half of the painting, or you can paint both of the canvases yourself like I did. This painting really reminds me of one of my favorite movies, What Dreams May Come, so you can kind of imagine two souls kind of meeting across on the other side of the world. We're going to be using a very simple palette of just blue, green, and white for the background, and really learning how to blend those colors together so we kind of get the illusion of water. It's a really fun and easy technique. We're also going to be using our bristle round brush to just create little circles that are going to be our leaves, and you can dip your brush in all sorts of colors, really any colors you want. So this is kind of a really fun one to do with a partner. And then we'll also be making these little teeny boats, and you can do those in any colors as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started and go over our materials. We are painting in acrylic paints. This time I'm using acrylic. I use Liquitex Basics most of the time, but when I'm teaching, especially to big classes, like we'll use a lot of paint. And so I would use acrylics, which you can get on diptych.com. And the colors I'm using are titanium white, phthalo green, phthalo blue, chrome yellow, deep yellow, fire red, bright red, violet, and Mars black. And for the kind of rainbow circle leaves that are up above, you can really use any colors that you want to. So you could definitely kind of break off and do your own thing on this painting. Very easy to do so. For the brushes, you can really have any size of these bristle rounds. I have like a size 12. This is a size 11, and this is a size 8. But really, if you have at least one of these brushes, these are what we're going to use to do the circles. And then a 1-inch flat. And then depending on your size of canvas, these are two 11 by 14 canvases. Depending on your size of canvas, you might want a very small flat, but if you're doing like a 16 by 20, a 1/2-inch flat would be great. And then I've got like a 1/4-inch flat, so half that size. And then a pointed round. This is a size 6 in the Simply Simmons. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is take out our 1-inch flat, have that ready, and we're going to take our 1/2-inch flat. I'm going to dip my brush in my water, dab it on my paper towel, and the first thing I'm going to do is a horizon line. So I'm going to make a tint, so I'm going to grab some white and a little bit of blue and mix those together. This brush can be used in two ways. I can use the flat part of my brush to make a very thick line, or I can turn my brush sideways and use the edge to make a very thin line. Even if I'm using the edge of my brush, if I press down really hard, I can still make a thick line. I'm going to use the edge of my brush, and I'm going to imagine that my canvas is divided in half and then in quarters. So I have 4 segments here. So I'm going to go about 1/4 down, and I'm going to use the edge of my brush, and I'm going to go all the way across both of my canvases. And this is a picture of kind of earth and water, so it does not need to be straight. And once you finish that, if you want to keep your water cleaner longer, you can just wipe your extra paint off on your paper towel. I also have paper towel and then just a jar of water. Drop that brush off in your water and get out your 1-inch flat. I'm going to dip that in my water. And this is a new brush, so it has a little bit of the sizing, the glue in there. So I'm just loosening it up a little bit. And I'm going to come in with my brush a little bit damp, and I'm going to do straight blue paint. This brush is the same as the other one. If I use the edge, right, I'm going to make thin lines, but if I use the flat part, I can really fill it in. So the first step here is to fill in the top 1/4 of your canvas with blue. And I'm probably gonna get a little bit of a sheen kind of on this wet paint, a little bit of a glare. So I'll try to turn my lights to help you guys really see. But basically you're just filling this in all the way with straight blue paint. So notice I'm doing long brush strokes, meaning I'm starting my brush on one side of the canvas and I'm going all the way to the other one. That's going to give a very smooth blended appearance. If you do lots of short brush strokes where you're lifting your brush and dropping it back down repeatedly, you're going to get more texture. There's not a right or a wrong, it's kind of personal preference. Right now what I'm going for is a more smooth look, so I'm just dragging back and forth. The other thing is if you're holding your canvas perpendicular to your canvas, or sorry, if you're holding your brush perpendicular to your canvas, you can kind of dig the paint off. See how I just removed that paint? So if I don't want that very kind of light blue look from the canvas showing through underneath, I'm gonna make sure that the handle of my brush is close to the canvas instead of straight up, and I'm going to brush very lightly, kind of back and forth across the canvas. If you wanted to paint your edges as you go, you can also lift up your canvas and do that as well. I don't want my paint too thick because I want this to dry sometime this year without getting out a blow dryer here. Okay, so I've gone down to my light blue line that I made. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush. Again, you can wipe it on your paper towel first. I'm going to clean it out in my water by pressing it very hard against the bottom of my glass and spinning it in a circle. And then I'm just going to press it against the side of the glass to get any of that excess water off. I'm going to lightly dab it on my paper towel. And now I'm going to grab plain white paint, but I'm going to try to only get it on one half of my brush. So I'm dipping one corner in white, and I'm going to line up that white not so that it's on the top, but it's so that it's on the bottom. So the white should be closest to the bottom of your canvas and the empty side should be closest to your blue. Now I'm going to go right over, line my brush up right over this line, and I'm going to start dragging across without stopping. And when I get to the other end, I'm going to flip my brush over and I'm going to start to go back. And you're going to see those two colors just blend together. If they're not blending very well, it might be because your brush is just a little bit dry. So you can try adding a little bit of water. And I'm going to turn these out just a little bit to help with the glare, so you can really see what I'm doing. You can always go back and dip your brush in the white again if you want to do it one more time. So I'm going across all the way, flipping my brush and going back. And you can keep going back and forth as much as you want until you get it as blended as you like. That's about how I want mine, so I'm going to leave it right there. And for the next step, I'm going to clean my brush out in my water. Press it against the side of the glass. Dab it a little bit on my paper towel, but your brush can be pretty damp for this. And also this canvas is a little bit dirty, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. That's the great thing about acrylic paint. It's gonna pretty much cover up anything. Okay, for the next step, I'm gonna put quite a bit of paint here on the canvas. So I'm gonna start off with blue first. Same brush, 1 inch flat. And up here at the top, I'm gonna do just like an inch or two of blue. Then I'm gonna go down leave a space about an inch, same size as the brush, and I'm going to go over a little bit further, leave a space, go a little bit further, and I'm using quite a bit of paint. And down here on the bottom, I'm going to go all the way across. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the side, on the other side. About an inch, leave a space, a little bit further, leave a space. And then all the way across. So I've got quite a bit of paint on there. If your paint looks thin, you might want to add a little bit more. Now I'm going to wipe my brush on the side. You can clean your brush out all the way for the next step, or you can just kind of wipe off any thick blue. Now I'm going to grab my phthalo green and I'm going to fill in those spaces. So I left a little space here, so I'm going to do a little streak of green there, streak of green there. So if you're the person on the right side, you're doing all of this on the right side of your canvas. And if you're over here on the left side, you're going to be doing this on the left side of your canvas. My paint needs to be so thick that it's not drying right away, because I'm going to have to blend all this together. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is clean my brush out in my water. Same brush, 1 inch flat. I'm going to take plain white paint, which there's a little blue that dropped in there, but that's fine. And I'm going to fill in this middle where the canvas is blank. So I'm going to come right in here, but I'm going to try not to touch the blue and green just yet. So I'm just going right in between here. And if you are painting alongside someone, you want to kind of take turns painting a little bit on each other's canvas so that you get some continuity between the two and it doesn't look really apparent that two different people painted it. Okay, I definitely want a decent amount of white on there. I'm just going in and adding a little bit more. And now before I continue, before I clean my brush out, I'm gonna use the edge of my brush and I'm just gonna carry this white all the way off over here. And same thing, I'll grab some white and just try to carry it all the way off up here. All right, the next step is to blend this all in. So I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna clean it out. I'm gonna leave it pretty damp, not soaking wet, but pretty damp. And now I'm gonna brush over this entire thing back and forth, and you're gonna see it just kind of start to blend together. So I'm gonna start at the top and work my way down because I want it to get darker as I go towards the bottom. So I'm gonna start up here. I'm using the flat side of my brush, damp 1 inch flat brush. I'm gonna start at the very top. I'm gonna go all the way across, flip my brush, go all the way back, flip my brush. And so as you're going back and forth, you're gonna notice that the colors are blending together, and you really can't go wrong with these colors. They're so pretty together. And we're getting these really pretty streaks of color. What's gonna happen if I continue to brush over this over and over and over again is eventually I'll have just one blue, green, turquoise color, solid. So this part is kind of about knowing when to stop. So right now I'm just working all the way down. And you're if you're each doing your own canvas, then you can go all the way across onto your partner's painting, or you can just go back and forth on yours. It doesn't really matter too much. Just try to go over back and forth a little bit in the very center. Try to get this filled in down here. If you did this and not a lot happened, it may be because your paint was just a little bit thin. And so you might want to go over it again just with a little bit thicker paint. So right now I want to look at it from far away, look at a picture of it, really kind of try to get a new perspective on it before I decide that, I'm just trying to fix that glare for you, before that I decide that it's done and before I overwork it. So I actually really like it where it is right now, but it's just a teeny, I want to blend it just a teeny bit more. So instead of using my brush just how it is, I'm going to do the same thing I did before where I clean it out and I start again with a fresh, damp brush. So flat side of my brush, and I'm just going to lightly glide along here. And I don't want to see any of the texture of my canvas showing through. So if I see any of that, I'm just going to lightly brush over it until it really kind of fills in. And also notice my brush strokes are going straight across, which is a little difficult because I try to keep my head out of the shot when I'm filming. But you want your brush strokes to be completely straight so that it gives the illusion of water. So for right now, I'm just going from left to right over on this left canvas to just straighten it out a little bit because I was painting from the side there. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go right to left. And this is a great time if you want to paint the edges of your canvas because you probably have a lot of thick paint on there. So it's a great time to kind of just carry that paint over the edge. So I'll show you. If I just lift this here, you can always paint your edges just a solid color, black, red, but I usually like to carry whatever the painting is on the front around the side. And normally you can wait till the end to paint your edges, but with this painting, there's so much paint, it's thick, you can kind of get some globs on the side and you don't necessarily want it to dry like that. All right, so that looks about how I like it. And my original title for this painting was Edge of the Earth because after I did this, I felt like it looked kind of like the edge of the earth. So I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but that's kind of what's going on here. All right, so for the next step, while we're waiting for this to dry a little bit, we're gonna add in some stars. So I'm gonna take some clean water. If you need to go clean your jar of water out, you can. I have just another jar ready here. And I'm gonna use my size 6 pointed round brush. And I'm gonna get my brush wet. I'm gonna take a little bit of white paint and move it off to the side. And I'm gonna go back and forth from my water to my paint. And I'm gonna mix a lot of water into my paint till it gets kind of like melted ice cream. And it's all over my brush. You can practice this on the side first to see how it comes out before you go onto your actual canvas if you'd like. There's a lot of ways to do this technique. Some people use a toothbrush. I am right-handed. I'm going to hold my brush at the very end of the handle with my left hand, and I'm going to tap this black area here, not on the actual brush, but right below it. And I want to hold my brush very loosely. If I hold on really tight, I'm going to make kind of lines of paint like Jackson Pollock. So I don't want that, so I'm very lightly going to tap, and my brush is going to bounce up and down. And I'm gonna add some stars up here. And it's okay if they go down in the water too. And anything you do that you don't really like, I encourage you to just leave it, because we're gonna be painting all of those pretty rainbow circles up here later. So please don't worry about that. So I just added a little bit of stars, and I can drop that brush off in my water. And I know this glare is crazy, but it's just because the paint is so wet. And I still want you guys to be able to really see the canvases. Yeah, that might have made it even worse. We're just gonna have to kind of deal until it dries a little bit more. All right, so right now, it's a good time to take a little break and let this dry a little bit. If yours is already dry, then you're good to go for the next step. But if it's not, then go ahead and take a little break right now. The next color we're going to be using is black. And you can use your small square brush or your pointed round brush. So let's just take a little break, sit back and look at what you've done, and let your canvas dry a little bit. For this next step, you can either use your 1/2 inch flat, so you can clean that out in your water, or your pointed round brush that we just used up top for the stars. So size 6 pointed round brush. Different strokes for different folks. You might find that you can make a way cleaner line, more steady line with the edge of your flat brush, and you may find that you just prefer to have a pointed brush. So kind of try out both and see what you think. You want your brush a little bit damp, and this is going to be just a tad bit intimidating, I'll warn you, just because if you're attached at all to what you've created, we're about to take black paint and just start drawing lines over it. So that might be just a teeny bit intimidating. So I'm going to use I'll go ahead and use my pointed round brush first here, and then I'll probably use my flat brush later. So I am taking my brush, I cleaned it out, it's a little bit damp, I'm loading it up with black paint. With this one too, you want to keep the same thing in mind. If you press down really hard, you're going to make a really thick line. And if you very lightly glide along the canvas, you'll make a thin line. So for a tree, you definitely want to start out thin, right? You can always make it thicker, but you can't really make it thinner without repainting a lot of your background. So if you are on the right canvas, I'm going to go to my bottom left corner, and I'm going to go over to the right about 3 inches, and that's where I'm gonna start my tree. Where I'm gonna end my tree, I'm gonna aim somewhere up here in the top right corner. So I'm gonna start here from my bottom left corner of my canvas over 3 inches, and I'm gonna kind of do a triangle, like I'm cutting a triangle out of my bottom corner of my canvas, and I'm going to swing onto my partner's canvas, and I'm going to keep going until I'm at least 3 inches over onto their canvas, and then I'm going to swing back, and I'm going to very lightly glide along and shoot for this top corner, remembering not to press down very hard so that I get a thin line. I'm going to get my brush wet again. When you're doing black lines, you want a little bit of extra water in your paint so you can make a really clean line without kind of losing paint as you go. So for now, the next one I'm going to go, if you're over here on the left canvas, I'm going to go to my bottom right corner, and same thing, I'm going to go over about 3 inches, and I'm going to cross my partner's tree here, and I'm going to swing around, and I'm going to aim up here for my top corner. And if your hand wiggles a little bit, you're in luck, because we're not drawing steel poles, we're drawing trees, and trees wiggle a little bit, so that's totally fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is go over this again, and now I'm going to thicken up the trunk a little bit. So I want the trunk to be the thickest area, and I want it to get thinner as it goes up. So down here at the bottom, I want you to kind of think of bell-bottom jeans. So I'm going to thicken it up down here at the bottom. And you can thicken to the right or to the left. It doesn't really matter. Kind of personal preference of where you want your tree to be. And you might find that it's easier too for you to start up top, very lightly press, and go back down. So see how I'm seeing the texture of my canvas as I'm running out of paint there? So making sure my brush is damp will definitely help with that. I never want it to be thicker higher up on the tree than it is down at the bottom. So if it looks really thick down here, but it looks thinner down here, then you want to make it even thicker down here. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other tree. So thicken up the bottom of the tree trunk like a bell bottom, really wide right at the bottom of the canvas. And then it gets thinner as I go up. Get my brush wet again if I need to. I can start up here. And slightly go up and down if I want it to be more tree-like. And it's really up to you how thick you want your tree to be. You can kind of keep going with this for a while, making it thicker and thicker. So if I was using the edge of my 1/2-inch flat, it could be the same thing. You can just use your edge, but not press down very hard. And you can even loosen the pressure that you apply as you get towards the end, and that'll give you a really kind of pointy end there. So whenever we're doing a tree, we have one branch or one trunk, and from there it's like the letter Y. So I always start my brush strokes on the trunk or the branch, and I sprout off from there, and it becomes a letter Y. Then from there, each of those could become a letter Y, and each of those could become a letter Y, and you can kind of go on forever adding on more and more Ys. The key to making it look more realistic like a tree is trying to add your Ys in different places. So maybe there's a branch on this side and only has one little Y on it. Maybe up here on the left, there's another branch, but this one has 2 Ys on it. So you can use the same pointed round brush, which may be easier if you're going to do some curved branches, or you can use your 1/2-inch flat if you're going to do some more straight branches. So I'll show you both. So I'm going to come halfway down on this branch here, and I'm going to take off and I'm going to have a little bit of a wave to my branch. And it's the same thing as how we wanted it to be thicker where it branches off. Same thing, we want it a little bit thicker right here where it branches off, so I can press down a little bit harder. And then I can slowly release the pressure as I go down. I know it's kind of hard, especially if you're not used to painting, but the more confidence you have in your brush stroke, it will show. So sometimes you kind of have to just go for it. If you're trying to be really careful, your hand might shake a little bit more. So I'm going to go and add another Y from there. My paint's still a little bit damp there, so it removed some of the background, but that's fine. I can just add some little circle leaves there. Add a little Y here. Now I can go up my branch halfway between this one. I can go and add a branch on the top. And go up a little bit further, add another branch. I can add little branches onto those. So now if I want to add any branches that are really curved, it's a little bit easier to do curved branches with your pointed round, because when we're using our 1/2 inch flat and we curve around, it's just a little bit more challenging. You might be able to do it that way, or you might find it's easier to do it with your pointed round. So I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to go halfway between these two branches. I'm going to add another branch right here, but I'm going to make sure that I really kind of curve off. I'm going to start here right in the middle. Curve backwards. Curve to the right, curve to the left. And you might get really going with your tree branches and think, by golly, this is so fun, but make sure you leave some room down here to do your little canoe if that's something that you want to do. So because this branch is a little bit thicker, I had to go down here and just make my tree trunk just a teeny bit thicker. Okay, same thing on the other side. You can go up about halfway. If you're getting a lot of your canvas showing like I just did, remember to just add a little water in with your paint. All right, so for my next step, I'm gonna add just a little bit of a highlight. This is similar to the last step in that you can use either your 1/2 inch flat or your pointed round. So I'm gonna clean out both brushes in my water, dab them on my paper towel so I can show you both. And this step is optional. This is just if you wanna add a little highlight to your tree. So you could make your highlight in white if you wanted to. You could also add a little bit of yellow to it. You could do brown if anybody wanted their trees to be more brown. It's really easy to make brown. It's mixing lots of colors together. So you could mix red, the primary is red, yellow, blue, and then mix some black in to make it a darker brown, or white in to make a lighter brown. Just kind of keep mixing and mixing until you like the shade. I'm going to keep mine black, and I'm going to add a little white highlight on the side just to keep it simple. This painting's really about being simple. So first you have to decide whose tree is in front. On mine, the tree that's in front is going to be this one that's over here on the right canvas, and the one over on the left is going to be behind. So overlapping usually makes paintings a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to come in here and I'll show you both ways. So first I'll show you at the pointed round. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to kind of flatten it out. And I'm gonna get white paint on one side, on one corner. And I'm gonna line that corner up so that it's on the right edge of my tree trunk. And I'm gonna start just above where our trees cross here. And I'm just gonna go right up the edge. And your paint should still be wet, so it should kind of be just blending right in. If it's not, you can always go in with more black paint, kind of go over it. So now I've wiped my brush on the side, just a flat brush without adding any more paint. I can brush over that edge again where those two colors meet, where the white and the black meet, to blend it in even more. It's kind of up to you how much you want it to stand out, how bright you want it. The more you brush over it, the more it's going to kind of blend in. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to show you with my other brush. So I've got my 1/2 inch flat. It's damp. I'm going to dip one corner in the white. I'm going to line up the right side of my white. It's because the light, if it's coming, it's going to come from one direction. So we're going to do all of our highlights on the right side. So I'm going to line that up on the right side of my trunk here. And I'm going to cross right over my partner's branch. And if you wanted to turn your brush over when you run out and go back down, you can. And remember what we learned before with the short and the long brush strokes. So now if you wanted to add some highlights at the top, you could switch to your baby brush if you feel more comfortable with that, your little detail brush, or I'm gonna just use the edge of my 1/2 inch flat here. So if you've got a lot of black paint in your brush, you might wanna clean it out. I'm going to get just plain white, and I'm going to line it up, and you can kind of choose. Do you want all your highlights on the bottoms of your branches or all of them on the top? I'm going to do all of mine on the top, and I'm not going to do it everywhere. I'm going to do what's called implied line. So a solid line would be if I traced my entire tree, every single branch. An implied line is where there's breaks within the line, and then your brain kind of puts the rest together. So I'm going to have breaks in my line. So maybe I'm going to have a little highlight. I'm using the edge of my 1/2 inch flat. My brush is perpendicular to my canvas, and I'm not going to press down very hard. And right along the top edge of this branch, I'm going to draw a little white line. And then I'm going to leave a space. And then maybe I'll have a little bit over here. Leave a space. Maybe there's a little on the top of that one. The top of that one, especially up here if you want it to stand out a little bit more, if you can't really see it because it's on the blue, which is dark as well. And then I'll show you that same thing over here. Go to the top edge. And that's it for my highlights. So you can step back, look at it from far away, see if you want it to be brighter or darker. I think I'm gonna leave mine right about there. I don't think I want too high of contrast for this today. All right, so for the next step, let's go ahead and do our leaves, and that way when you're finished that, you can look at it and decide if the boats is something that you really want to add on. So you could paint traditional leaves up here as well, and there's lots of fun techniques you can do for that. I'm going to do these fun little circle leaves. So I'm using these 11 by 14 canvases, which aren't huge. So I think I'm going to start off with my size 11 bristle round brush, and with this brush it holds so much water. We used quite a bit of paint and water in this painting so far. Now we want to stop doing that as much because this brush just holds so much. So I'm going to take this brush and I'll dip it in my water, but then I'm actually going to take my hand and I'm going to squeeze out any excess water, because otherwise it's just going to kind of drip down onto my canvas. So I'm going to start off with yellow and then I'll kind of move into the greens and the reds. So with this part of the painting, it's really fun to just kind of go crazy. There's no rhyme or reason. You can go all over the place. You can dip your brush in any colors and really go for it. So for this technique, I'll show you, I'm going to first dip in this chrome yellow, this bright yellow. And then I'm going to show you how I just twist. I'm going to hold my brush completely perpendicular to the canvas and I'm going to twist it in a circle. Okay, so find somewhere where I want to put one of these leaves, set my brush down and twist it in a circle. And that's all we're doing, and we're going to do it kind of over and over again. Now the fun part is when you dip your brush in two different colors. So now watch, I'm going to dip in yellow and white and twist in a circle, and you'll see those colors just kind of swirl together. It reminds me of like little gumdrops or something like that, some sort of candy. I can also dip in the dark yellow at the same time. Now, if I keep swirling it over and over and over, remember it's going to become just kind of one color. So just keep that in mind, and don't forget that you can do multiple brushes for this. So I can come in with a smaller brush. And make sure that you have some that go off the edge of your canvas. That's fun for the brain to kind of imagine that some of them are going right off. And you imagine that there's more up above. So with the yellow, I'm going to come all the way over here. I'm going to do some small, some big. It's hard to kind of challenge yourself sometimes to just make things random, but the more random it is, the better. You can also have them overlap. So notice I'm not pressing down super hard, because if I do, it's going to happen. I'm going to make a very large circle. So that's fine if that's what you're going for, is a very large circle. But if you're not, then you don't want to press down too hard. So you can go to town now, adding in your yellow circles. And I actually want to add in some even smaller ones. So I'm going to take my pointed round brush. And this is what makes this painting fun, is it's just relaxing to just play with color and play with paint and swirl it together and not think so much about painting things exact. I can do some little small ones. I'm dipping in white, and I'm going to try to use as little water as possible for these, because that's going to make my paint less transparent. It's fine to be transparent in some areas because it's kind of cool to see, you know, oh, I can see through the yellow, so it makes green. But for the most part, I want these solid. So I'm also going to take some yellow and some white and go ahead and mix it together so that I have a more opaque pale yellow. And that'll be great for overlapping as well. So I'm using the same technique with this brush, just on a smaller scale here. Doesn't need to be perfect circles. And remember what we talked about before. Sometimes less is more. So if you need to step back and look at it and decide how much more you need to do, that's fine. I'm going to do a few more, especially right here. Let's call this little quarter of the canvas is going to be, this branch right here is going to be the one that's really yellow. And I'm also being careful not to completely cover up my branches. I still want to see them showing through a little bit. So maybe right here there's a cluster of a few of them. And maybe they're kind of all different sizes. And I suggest kind of trying to build it all up together. So even if you think you might want to add more yellow, once you kind of get some in there, go ahead and start working on your other colors and kind of look at the whole thing from far away so that you can really kind of see. So if you are over here on the left and you're using red, you can start kind of adding some red into your partner's canvases. We have two reds here. So this is, in typical paint names, would be like a cadmium red light. And this would be more like a cadmium red deep, or almost like an alizarin crimson. And so we've got this kind of bright orangey red and this more pinky red, and they're going to create different tones. And when you add white to them, right, it's going to make pink. So if you don't want pink, then make sure there's not too much white in your brush. So next I'm going to show you kind of some green. So let's see, let's go ahead and just dip our brush straight in the green over here and just see what happens, see what kind of circle we get with the yellow still on our brush. Oh, that's cool. Make sure you go off the edge of your canvas for some of them. Doing some that are overlapping. If you want some that are a little more turquoise, you can add a little bit of blue in with your paint. Or, sorry, not a little bit of blue, a little bit of white. You can get kind of a teal color. I'll show you what that looks like. So mix those together, you get kind of like a light teal. I can also dip into my yellow. Oh yeah, that's fun. I really like that. And now I'm going to start overlapping and going on top of my yellow a little bit. I don't want to see a really like harsh, oh, the yellow stops and the green begins. I want it to kind of fade in so they look like they kind of blend together. So I'll definitely do some green ones over here. And then maybe I'll do some little ones to really incorporate those. Do some overlapping. Do some little small ones that are just kind of floating around. Let's wipe my brush and maybe get some darker green ones that overlap with the little light ones. I feel like I need a few more darker ones up here and a little bit more clusters. See how they're all kind of spread out? I want just a little bit more of the feeling like they're clustered together. And also all three of these I did right at the edge of the canvas, but I want it to look like maybe there's one going right off the edge there. So maybe there's a big pile of them down here. And if they're all looking kind of the same color, don't be afraid to, you know, add something else in. I can add more yellow, kind of brighten it up. I want kind of more of a cluster up here too, I think. Adding just a little bit of green in with those. Gotta mix up more pale yellow because I turned it green. Oops. And that's what happens when you get a lot of paint on your brush. It's very thick, but that's okay. We can just work with it. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to kind of incorporate some of the red in. And if you're doing both canvases at the same time, you probably already started with that. So I'm just cleaning out my brush because red and green are going to make it more neutral. And for this painting, I'm going bright. I'm going very, very bright. I'm going to make sure I get it really dry, like we talked about before. It's really drying it off with my paper towel. All right, so I'm going to take some plain fire red. I forgot about this brush over here. He's just sitting there waiting. I love this red on this blue. Love it, love it, love it. If there's any stars you really like, try not to cover them up. Now maybe I'll dip in the other red too. Let's get a little bit of that, get some going off the edge. Make sure that I'm pressing down harder for some to give it lots of different sizes. And now here's the fun part, is when you can start incorporating the yellow and the red together. So this brush, I still have a little bit of yellow on it. Now I'll go ahead and just dip that in the red. And now we'll really get some swirls of color. So I'll go over here on my partner's canvas, twist around, and oh, cool. Swirl those colors together. I can also carry a little bit more yellow onto this side. Make sure I get some small ones in there too. Lost my little small brush here. So when you're ready, you can start experimenting, kind of dipping more in both of the colors. If you want kind of more of like an orange look, you can dip in white. If you want more of the pink look. So I have mainly red in my brush, and now I'm gonna dip just one little piece of it in some of my pale yellow. And that's the other fun part too. If you do one and you don't like it, you can just go right over the top of it. I'm going to start getting more of the dark red. I'm accidentally covering up some of my stars here. I'm not really meaning to do that. It's just happening as I'm getting into it. And I also want to make sure they don't all end in a straight line, right? I like how this red is kind of dipping down here. Do some more smaller ones. And what I'd like to see a little bit more of in here is kind of a peachy color. So I'm gonna take my brush, and you can do this at any point. You can kind of mix it up. See, oh, I really like that color. So kind of peachy, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of extra white for my swirl. I love peach, so I'm always gonna try to add that in somewhere. If any of your little clusters of red ones look kind of too similar, you can always go in and go over one of them and add a little peach one or a little pink one. And this just adds for some nice variation. I'll even carry some over here. All right, I'm gonna wipe my brush off now, but without cleaning it out, so I can just keep it dry. I'm gonna now go dip in my red. Before I clean my brush out and switch to the purple, I'll just start incorporating some purple now. So especially right in here. So I've got purple and red on my brush, and I'm just kind of swirling those together, and that's gonna make kind of deep dark red. And just get a few of those in there before I switch. Okay, so now I'm gonna go all in with the purple. So now I do need to clean my brush out. And I'll do some just plain purple first. And purple acrylic paint is always a little challenging just because it's so transparent. It's really hard to get opaque purple paint. See how you can kind of see through it? It works for this painting, but sometimes you just want a really bright purple and it's just hard to get that. So I'm doing some plain ones. Maybe I'll do some smaller plain ones. And then I can start dipping in white at the same time, and I can also take some white and mix up a pale yellow, or sorry, a pale purple. Because you'll find that depending on what color is mainly filling up your brush, it's going to change the look of the little circles that you do. Kind of going bold there, getting a big one. remembering what we talked about before when we're kind of going to do some that are going off the edge and some that are clusters. So I've kind of got a little cluster going over here. I'm going to also dip in my dark red here and get some of that mixed in here, especially over here where they meet. Got to be careful with that red though, because it can take over. It's a lot more pigmented than the purple is. And I think the key with the purple, honestly, is just to paint pretty thick with that. Don't be afraid to have like globs of purple on your brush. I'm gonna add just a little bit more red. Over here somewhere, just incorporate that a little bit more. It makes the painting look more cohesive when all of the colors are kind of blending in with each other or spreading out. I'm going over some of these just because with the purple paint being very transparent, it's just kind of hard to see them. And you know, I might even take some straight purple and mix it in with some red ahead of time to get a nice kind of magenta-y color. Just to mix it up a little bit. If any of them, I think it's cool when some of them you can see through them. It gives it a different tone, but if any of them look like they just don't have that much paint, you can always go in and add more. So right now I'm just making sure that I have quite a few little ones and making sure that I have not the straight line. So, you know, I'm gonna come down and even add another little one right here. just to really make it look like these are kind of bending down here. And then maybe over here with the purple, maybe some of them kind of float off. And that's something I didn't mention before. Obviously, trees don't really look like this, at least here on Earth. And so they don't need to actually go on the branches. They can float off in the middle of nowhere. That's totally fine. This is kind of more of like a fantasy painting. So once you kind of start getting it filled in, you definitely want to stop, take a break, look at it from far away, see what you want to add, what you want to take away. So what I'm seeing here is I really like kind of the movement of this purple. I'm going to add a little bit more in right there. I'm really liking this purple, how it goes in. Maybe even come even a little bit more out right here. I can make sure I get my pale purple in there too, so it really kind of stands out. I like how the purple comes in and then it goes up, and then the red comes down and then it goes up. But over here, I feel like it's kind of going straight across, like all of the circles are ending at the same point. So that's where I want to come back in. And maybe I want to bring the yellow down a little bit. So I especially want to have some yellow and some white. And let's come over here. I think right here is where I want it to really come down. Let's just say there's a lot right here. Can overlap on the branch. That's going to make things look more interesting. I've got some little ones in there now. I can go and add some big ones in there. So you can see why I needed so much paint, because kind of getting it dirty as I go and dipping my brush. So I like that better. I like that better. It's looking a little bit more filled in. And the only thing I think I want to incorporate is just a little bit more red happening over here. Just a few more. And I think that's right about where I want it for the red. I think it could use some more green. Let's do a little bit more green before we call it a day on our circles. And I'm just kind of trying to mirror what's on the other side, just so that it has a nice balance to it. I'd say that's good. I don't want it too filled in. So that looks about right where I want it. So there's already a lot of blue and green in the painting too. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so at this point I would stop. Really make sure any of your brushes that have paint on them are in your water. I usually don't leave my brushes out of my paint at all, but because this one you're kind of switching back and forth between colors so much, you don't want to have to keep cleaning your brush out over and over again. So I do kind of just leave them out on the side. And so now I'm going to drop any brushes I'm not using in the water, and then we'll start the little canoes. I love this painting right here, just how it is. But when I finished it, when I originally painted it, I just felt like it needs a third element, like it needs one more thing to really kind of ground it. So you could either leave your painting right here if you're not really a boat person, or if you want to add in some little boats, and now's the time. So I'm going to use a very small flat brush. You can use your 1/2-inch flat, or you can use one that's even smaller, like a 1/4 inch. And I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning a detail brush, but that would be handy for this part. All right, so to paint in our boats, I will show you on a piece of paper here. So that you can really see without all of the contrast of the background. So I'm going to do a red boat on the right and a yellow boat on the left. It's kind of up to you how many boats you want to do, what colors you want them to be. I'm going to use my darker red paint here. And so for this boat, you want to first start off with a C shape, okay? So I'm using the edge of my brush here, and I'm going to come in here and do a C, or kind of a crescent moon. Then for the bottom of the boat, I'm going to do a straight horizontal line. Now at the back of the boat, I'm going to do a very short little line that's vertical. And now I'm going to try to connect the top of that short vertical line with my curved line, my curved C. So I'm going to come up here, and it's going to come to a point, the little triangle there. The next thing I'm going to do is just fill it in. And it's going to be really small, so we don't need a ton of detail here. After I fill it in, I'm going to take a little bit more red, and you can even add some, let's do blue. Let's add a teeny bit of blue to our red paint. It's going to make it kind of a dark purple. And I'm going to add that to the front of the boat. using the flat side of my brush, and I'm brushing down my boat, and I'm running out of paint as I go, and that's perfect. So the front is going to be a little bit darker. And now for the back side of my boat, I'm going to do a little white highlight. So I'm going to take some white and I'll go right down the edge there, and I'll brush that with my brush strokes starting on the right and brushing towards the left, kind of running out of paint as I go. And that's just going to give it a little definition. Now if it gets too light or too dark, you can always go back and just add more of your red over the top of it. It's kind of up to you how bright you want it, how dark you want it. Then we'll go in, you can use your detail brush, the edge of your square brush, and I'll do white right along the top edge. And that's just going to help that pop and help that stand out. And after that, we'll do the reflection. So let's just first get our boats in there, and then we can do the reflection. You might be more comfortable with your little detail brush doing these boats, or you might be more comfortable with the square. So just, you know, see what works for you. So since the red boat, you guys already kind of got to see that, I'll start with the yellow boat so you can see the opposite direction here. So I'll use both yellows, but I'm going to start off with the darker yellow. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to put my boat somewhere over here in the water on the left. I think I'll go right about here. I'm going to do my C, but this time my C is going to go backwards. With the yellow, you're really going to see how transparent yellow paint is. So if your brush is, my brush still has a lot of red in it, so I'm just wiping that off. If your brush is wet at all, you're really going to see through it. So I'm going to mix some white into my paint now. I got it sketched in there. Gonna fill it in. And I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side. So on the top edge, I'll do a white highlight. On the back of the boat, I'm going to do a white highlight. And remember what I taught you at the very beginning? If you turn your brush so that the handle's close to the canvas, you can lay it on more thickly so it doesn't just kind of blend right in. And so you don't remove it off the canvas. So now I'm going to come in with some yellow. Fill it in again. And now this is the next step of the boat, is we're going to make sure that we have a thick piece at the front. So you almost want to make your C a little bit wider. So I'm going to show you what I mean in just a second. I'm going to grab some bright yellow. Add that on there too. So I have a bright little boat. You know, I think once upon a time I painted these boats white first so that they weren't transparent. So that's an option too. So I've got my little yellow boat. Show you my little red boat now. Maybe they're right across from each other, maybe they're not. Maybe it's off center, it's kind of up to you. So I'm gonna do my little C. Kind of like a little canoe. I can add my darker red to the back with the blue. Or sorry, to the front of the boat. Make sure it's really thick in the front there. And add a little white highlight to the back. This is where the detail brush would come in handy to draw a white line across the top. We can always go over this with red again if we want it brighter. And so what I mean by adding more to the front, I'll show you on here. If it's already really round at the front, then you don't have to add more on. So this one's pretty round. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take black and I'm going to kind of cut out a sliver. So I can start at the top point and just kind of go down the middle of the C to kind of cut out a sliver. And that's gonna just imply that there's two sides to the front of the boat. And I can also trace along the bottom of the boat with black. So I'm gonna do that on both boats. So this one here, it could be a little bit rounder in the front, a little bit more C-shaped. So I'm gonna go in and kind of just add in some up there. And now I'm gonna go in with my black and just go right down the middle of the C, cut out a sliver, do black right along the bottom. Same thing over here. Right down the front there. Right along the bottom. So now we'll do the reflections. That'll give that a little bit of time to dry. So the reflection, you might need to turn your canvas sideways depending on how your brain works. Sometimes that's what I need to do to really be able to imagine what the mirror image looks like. So think of it kind of like a butterfly. So if I take my boat and just kind of turn it sideways, I want the mirror image underneath. So this curved this way, so this is going to curve this way. Come back. So we're basically drawing the mirror image of the boat directly below it. And this does not need to be perfect. It's mainly about just getting the paint in there. It doesn't need to be looking exactly like your boat up above, because we're just going to blend the paint in. So I'm going to come in right below my red boat here. And I can start over here and just go across and up. You can pretty much do it in one brush stroke if you're using your small 1/4 inch flat. Make sure I clean my brush out and make sure it's really dry. Do the same thing over here. I'm gonna get my dark yellow, my 1/4 inch flat brush. I can do it in one stroke. I can start over here on the left and just brush over here and curve around. And now I want to still do that, whatever outlines I did before. So if you have a white highlight at the top, go ahead and add that in. So I'll do a white highlight along the top of my boat. I'll do some white in the back of my boat. Same thing with my red one. White highlight along the top, white along the back, brush it over. And I'll probably leave out the black line on the front because it's just not that necessary. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna now mess up what I just did. So we're gonna do horizontal lines. It's important that your horizontal lines are completely straight. If they're not straight, the illusion will not be there that it's water. So make it as straight as you can. So I'll show you one here. We just went in and we filled in our reflection, and then we took white and we traced it along the top, and we went along the back with the white. Right, so we've got our reflection. So we're now going to take our flat brush, so you can use your 1/2 inch flat or your 1/4 inch flat, and you're going to use white paint, and you're going to use the edge of your brush to basically cut lines into this. Using the edge, and you want them to be completely straight across. If you start to go down, it's not going to have the illusion. It needs to be going as straight as possible, and you want to do short brush strokes. And you can keep grabbing more white paint. And they're going to go just beyond the boat as well. So we're going to do white first, and then we can add some red in there too. And you might have to keep going back and grabbing more white paint, but we basically want to blur the edges of this reflection boat. We want it to kind of disappear. And I find it easier to do straight lines when I'm going just left to right. If I start going back and forth, my lines get a little more jagged, and that's kind of fine because it's just like jagged waters. But I try to just go left to right. So I've got my brush here. My white paint is super dirty from all the things that have been in it. All the colors here. So I'm gonna get white paint, and I'm gonna have to lean over my canvas just a little bit here. So after you get some in white, you can wipe your brush off and go ahead and do some in red too. Especially coming off from where your boat is. So I'm going to go back in now and do some more white. I wish that I had some cleaner white here. I'm going to really try to get some globs of white on my brush here. So I can get some that are more pure white. See how much more that's standing out? Some that are really short, and then some that are a little bit longer. And up close, you're gonna go, what in the world is that? But from far away, you're really gonna see the illusion that there's the boat there. So we'll do the same thing on the other side, and then after that, we'll do one more layer on our boats just to get them a little bit more vibrant. So I'm gonna go over here. I'll just do my yellow first. I got my yellow, and I'm gonna use the edge of my brush. Wipe my brush off and come in there with the plain white. Get some globs of paint on there. All right, so that looks about right for my reflection. It definitely helps to have some little ones that are very small but just kind of off on their own. So it really looks like it kind of fades away. So now if you wanted to, you could add another layer of paint onto your boats. Completely optional, especially because that paint was so transparent. So I'm taking my 1/4 inch flat here. Maybe I want to add a little bit of bright red onto my boat too. Add a little bright red on there. Get my dark red as well. And I want that black line in the center of my sea to be really thin. So if it ended up kind of thick, you can go over it. Just kind of thin it out a little bit. Same thing with the front of my boat. I want it to be darker, but I still want to kind of see the red of it. It's almost like you're just going over and adding another layer. You can even go over the black again. You could add some detail by just doing some lines, kind of brushing from the front there. You could add a little bit of black down here, just doing some little black horizontal lines under the boat, just kind of cast a shadow on it. I can take my detail brush, do the same thing that I did with the black, but with the white. Take some white and really kind of get like a little highlight on the top there. Can make the back of the boat look more square. And I'm doing some brush strokes, flicking my brush from the right to the left. The back of the boat. You could have a highlight on the front of the boat if you wanted to. I'm going to do the same thing over on my little yellow boat here. Let's start with the white. Take some white, straighten up the back of my boat. A little bit more white to the back, a little bit more white to the top. I think I will do a white highlight on the front of my yellow boat just because the direction it's facing. We wanted our light to be coming from this direction. So I'll just come in and add a little bit of white to the front there. And I'm going to add a little white and bright yellow. Right next to this black line. So it really looks like kind of some wood is, these are wooden canoes in my mind. I don't know a thing about boats, but that's what we're going to call it. I can go over my black line, make it a little bit darker to add some black into my reflection. The last thing I want to do, I think I just want a little bit more yellow. Thicker, brighter, more yellow paint on my boat here. I'll take some of my bright yellow. And then the last step is going to be to add a little bit of an oar. I always feel weird saying that word oar again. Don't know a thing about boats. Just painting them, that's all. Just making that black line even a little bit thinner, so that you can kind of barely see it. So for the oar, I basically want black and white paint right up next to each other in a diagonal across the boat. So I'm going to start up above the boat. I'm using the edge of my 1/4 inch flat, and I'm just doing a line in black. Clean my brush, go right next to it, and do a line in white. And that's going to be our oar. And you can use your detail brush if that's easier for you. And you could do white first, technically, if you wanted to. I'm going to do black first. Okay, so I'm going to use the edge of my brush. My painting's dry, so I can rest my wrist here. I'm going to go towards the back of the boat. And as thinly as I can, I'm just going to do a line going down. Same thing over here. You could do it in just black, actually. I don't think it really matters that much. It's just the white gives a little highlight if that's something you want. So now I'm taking white. Same thing, taking white. And that's it. That's my little boats. All right, so that's the last step. I want to thank you so much for watching this video and for painting along with me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below, and I hope that you had a great time painting.